kingdom of East Anglia, which has many connections with the sea. Here, the Reverend Nelson was vicar, and one of his sons was sent to sea at the age of 12. In front of this clock tower is a town sign which shows a hare, a wat in Norfolk, jumping over a barrel or tun, making the name Watton. The two children are the legendary Babes in the Wood. I spend most of the year here as general manager of a garage and car sales business. But for 2 or 3 weeks, I leave mechanization behind and depend entirely on my own resources. One of the great problems is crew, and I was fortunate in finding a tough, resourceful sailor from Liverpool University, Bill Brockbank. Our dinghy Wanderer is a 15-foot Wayfarer class, a very capable, buoyant, and fast sailing dinghy. In this stern compartment, we have to pack sufficient stores and equipment to last 2 men for 18 days. One of the most essential items is this drum of 10 hundredweight Caroline warp, which we tie to the sea anchor, which we rely on to keep us head to wind and sea in gale conditions. We forgot about the magnetic deviation caused by stowing the cine camera beneath the compass. The watertight beakers contain navigation equipment, glucose tablets, washing up kit, and T-pole. One wonders how to fit everything into a 15-foot boat. Masses of clothing, oilskins, water and food, medical kit, flares, and all the other necessary items. Nothing can be left to chance if you're going to survive. We even carry oil in case the weather becomes well nigh impossible, so that we can literally pour oil on troubled waters. There can never be too much careful preparation for a deep-sea voyage. Our radio is completely waterproof and shockproof, and we use it for direction finding and receiving weather forecasts. We cannot send. Navigation must be accurate. We use a sextant to confirm our dead reckoning. The book is Reed's Nautical Almanac. For the long trail north, I chose an automatic car as being the best car for the job. And after a thorough check and fill-up, we set out on one of the most risky legs of the journey, 700 miles to Kinlochbervie in Sutherland. For 1964, I had selected a rather more difficult cruise. From the north of Scotland up to the small island of Rona, due north across to the Faroes, across the gale-swept Norwegian Sea, Trondheim. Vikings used to cruise this area regularly in their 80-foot open longboats, but our boat is rather smaller. Our route took us through the pleasant Norfolk countryside, on to Cambridge, through Newark, and up the Great North Road. As I said before, this is one of the most hazardous parts of the journey. We drove all through the night, and the small hours of the morning found us leaving Glasgow and driving on over Rannoch Moor in heavy rain. As we approached the sombre valley of Glencoe, the rain had cleared, and we dropped down through the pass, pulling into the Claymore filling station, which is also a Scottish Tourist Board information centre. The excellent forecourt service included attention to the trailer tyres. On the way down the valley towards Ullapool, a car signalled that a trailer tyre was smoking. The trailer suspension unit had collapsed due to a bracket being eroded by constant immersion in salt water. Everyone was very despondent and thought this was the end of the trip. In fact, the branch provided us with a satisfactory jury spring, which lasted until we could get it welded. The road between Ullapool and Kyleskew Ferry was very bad, merely a rough country track, and we were forced to drop down to 5 miles an hour. The ferry, which plies across the loch between Kylemore and Kyleskew, is very efficient and rather unusual in that the whole deck cradle swings round on a turntable. When we had the car and trailer aboard, there was just 2 inches to spare at either end. No long-winded casting off here. A quick flick and the hook leaves the ring bolt and the ferry's away. From Kylemore on the other side of the ferry, roads are very narrow, but the surfaces are much better. The scenery is superb, although some of the gradients are quite sharp. We had taken turns to drive, and for the first time ever we arrived in Scotland completely fresh. I shall never go back to a manual gearbox. At last we rounded the final elbow bend down to the harbour at Kinlochbervie, the northernmost fishing port in western Scotland and the real starting point of our summer cruise. Not a very easy place to launch a boat. By now we had cold feet and were trying to think up reasons for delaying departure. But all we could do was make our last preparation a seasickness tablet each. Our first landfall was the small island of Rona, about 64 miles north of Kinlochbervie. We were escorted out of harbour by an enterprise whose crew was holiday making there. Once on the water, the vital thing is to rig lifelines. Very few people realise how dangerous it is to sail without a lifeline at sea. But it's no exaggeration to say that 50 yards away from the boat in a seaway, your crew would never find you again. The wind got up at once, 45 to 6, and Bill had to go forward to take in the jib. Despite this, we had our supper, a chicken which we had bought from the Kinlochbervie Hotel, and then sailed all night. The following morning, we should have found the island of Rona, but visibility was very bad. We endeavoured to break through the mist and finally sighted land. But it was not Rona. It was a small island called Sulaskia, 12 miles to the westward, the home of the Solon geese, or gannet. This cave runs right through the island with a blowhole in the centre. Bill is just going off watch. Whilst at sea, we stick rigidly to 3 hours on and 3 hours off. Man on watch does everything. From here, we laid course for Rona, still hidden in the mist. In poor visibility, we crossed the bows of a trawler, fishing on the bank, and eventually the island took shape through the mist. Rona is a fascinating place with a tremendous amount of wildlife. It once supported a small community of 30 people, but is now uninhabited. We moored in the little cove there, and watched by the local coast guard, climbed up the cliff onto the island, meeting with stiff opposition from a spirited gull chick on the way. The Admiralty pilot says the landing is easy, there being natural steps in the rock, What they don't tell you is that each step is 6 feet high. We brought all the food ashore because Bill had been continually seasick, and it was essential that he had a square meal and a few hours to get some benefit out of it. There were seabirds nesting everywhere, completely unafraid of man. Bill spotted a fulmar petrel, almost indistinguishable from the background. Later, Bill investigated one of the ruined houses, but was chased out by fulmar petrels nesting there, who have an unpleasant but highly effective defense. They bring up yesterday's lunch and spit it at the intruder. With a good meal and egg, we were ready for the next leg. 200 miles to go to reach the Faroes. So Bill hoisted full sail, and we were away. It's very important always to creep the halyards neatly because you may want them down in a hurry. And it's essential that they should not snarl. The following morning I found a hagfish clinging to the stern. A peculiar sort of fish this, with a sucker mouth instead of teeth. He likes his food rather high and will only attach himself to something living provided its expectation of life is short. Just as well I didn't know it at the time. Food, of course, is a tremendous problem. You need such large quantities to give you enough energy and enough calories to keep warm. Two days later, after continual headwinds, by our reckoning we were within range of the Faroe radio beacons. So Bill got out the direction-finding set to confirm our position. The plot put us just 60 miles away from the southern Faroes. So we immediately tacked and began to close the land. This is the period when we are particularly cautious. Closing the land can always be very dangerous, especially if you get caught in an onshore gale. The following morning, 4 days out from Scotland, sun broke through and we took the opportunity of stripping off. Oilskins are absolutely essential, but they do present problems. They keep the water out, but they also keep perspiration and condensation in. A torn oilskin in the southern latitudes is merely annoying. This far north, it would be very serious with the risk of exposure. On the other hand, one can become extremely uncomfortable from body moisture retained in oilskins. An opportunity of drying out one's underclothes, or perhaps wringing out would be a better term, is very welcome. After all, 3 fishermen's jerseys, quilted Caroline Arctic underclothes, a short pullover, quilted jacket, 2 pairs of padded trousers, long woolen vest and pants, can all hold quite a lot of moisture. Bill came on duty and took over the boat, and I snatched a rare opportunity of enjoying the sun. I say rare because you are continually working in a small boat. You have no relaxation and not enough sleep. Off duty, you're glad to crawl below, draw the spray cover over your face, and try to sleep. Morning, land appeared through the clouds. We were just inside the 12-mile limit of the Faroes, and of course one of the fishery protection helicopters came out to make sure that we were not doing anything we should not be doing, such as fishing. As we drew in, 2 fishing boats came across. One of them gave us a tow into Sumba. I have no false modesty about accepting a tow in, especially when the landing is as dangerous as this one. There is only one harbour and no room whatever for error. The fisherman took us home, leaving his crew to gut the catch. They worked tremendously fast, about 5 seconds per fish. The Faroes are interesting islands. The country is not beautiful, as Norway is, but it does have a tremendous fascination. One of the boats gave us a tow through the night to Trandisvåg. The people are very, very friendly, and we were made very welcome by the 2 Jespersen families. The variety of the hand-knitted traditional pattern jerseys is amazing. These are not fancy wear, they're all working jerseys. One of the neighbours put on the national costume for our benefit. Beautiful hand embroidery on the bodice, the apron and hat, and with hand-beaten silver buckles at the neck and the waist. Two English airmen are buried in this cemetery. They were killed while trying to rescue an injured fisherman. The graves are beautifully cared for. We had a trip up to the cliffs on the west side of the island where Bill tried the Isaac Newton test with a piece of rock. It took 9 seconds to hit the water, which means, according to my rough reckoning, that the cliffs are something over 600 feet high. In an onshore gale, you wouldn't have a chance if you were driven onto this coast. The cliffs are quite unclimbable. After 3 days in the Faroes, we decided that it was time for us to go, and a local taximan took us with all our gear down to the harbour and helped us load the boat. Very friendly of him. The Jespersen families came to see us off and presented us with a very attractive enamelled Trandisvåg teaspoon and a set of cufflinks decorated with the national flag. We were very touched by this gesture. We were now setting off on the longest passage of the trip, some 500 miles across the Norwegian Sea to Trondheim. We'd had an easy passage to Faroes. Now we were going to pay. In the Faroes, they had told us that this was the worst summer they had experienced since 1928. And when we finally arrived in Norway, we were told it was the worst summer for over a century. This we could well believe. The first day was good sailing. Bill seemed to have completely recovered from his seasickness. Another seasickness pill. The second day out, the weather started worsening. Then we ran into continuous heavy weather. 4 gales, one after another. We only managed to sail for about 3 hours in between. We had to be very careful not to go overboard when reefing or shaking out reefs. In fact, in conditions like this, one seems to do nothing but reef. It was very hard work indeed, and our hands were beginning to suffer badly from saltwater sores. It was becoming very painful to get hold of either the jib or the boom. bitterly cold, and Bill began to suffer again from seasickness. A tremendous handicap in these conditions with a 10-day passage in front of us. At this stage, we enjoyed the luxury of changing into our last set of dry clothing. Continuous gales built up, force 6, force 7, force 8. There's only one thing you can do. Put out the drogue, take in the sails, and take the mast down. You have to be most careful of the mast not to damage it or tread on the shrouds. You drop the mast into the boom crutch and tie it down, and then you just turn in and go to sleep. There's nothing much else you can do anyway.
Shipping forecast for the next 24 hours. Lightning and 40. Wind westerly, force 7 to gale force 8, veering northwest and moderating overnight to force 5 to 6. Fair Isle, wind northwest, gale force 8 to severe gale force 9, moderating later today to force 6. Rain at times, otherwise good visibility. Faroes, wind northerly, severe gale force 9, backing northwest, force 5 by morning. Showers, otherwise good visibility.
Force 8, and finally force 9. This was a terrifying experience with seas running 35 feet or more, and the tremendous peaks sheared straight off with the wind, and blowing into smoke, and crashing down into the troughs. Several times the boat was driven completely under, and after the third time's capsizing, she was laying bottom up. We climbed onto her, and were swept off twice, managed to climb back and pull her upright. Seeing this force 9 would never ease. We were cold and shivering and wet. And eventually, after 18 hours, it died down, and we were able to get some sleep. The aftermath of a gale brings many jobs. Bailing out, for instance, even a watertight compartment, and general repairs. The mast had shattered twice during the worst of the storm, and we were forced to cut out a 6-foot length and lash the ends together with splints. This reduced the length of our mast quite considerably and made things much more difficult. The water got into the camera case. This had to be mopped out carefully and dried. We felt much happier underway and heading for Norway. I got out the charts from their protective covers and plotted the new course we should have to lay to reach our destination, the nearest landfall at Aalesund, still some 200 miles away. We'd lost nearly all our food and all our dry clothing, and so the remaining 5 days of the passage were spent on short rations and in wet clothes. We were suffering a great deal. In fact, Bill, in the course of the passage, lost 18 pounds in weight. We were more pleased than we could say to get into the shelter of the Norwegian coast. I've been to this area of Norway before, and we were sure of the usual wonderful reception. The Shell tanker turned back and gave us a tow in. We told them that we'd come from Scotland via Faroes, and they remarked, "In that?" When we said, "Yeah," they burst out laughing and said, "You are madmans." I was inclined to agree. Sitting at ease behind the refueler, I was able to reflect how lucky I'd been in my crew. Bill had taken much more than his full share of the work and hardship of the voyage, and I could not have wished for a better part. On the Sunday morning, we went to church for the morning service and Holy Communion. There are very few atheists to be found at sea. You begin to realize that life is not so permanent as we like to think. Man is not perhaps so all-powerful.